We're on Shabbat, Perek Bet, Mishnah Aleph. This is the first Mishnah in the second chapter of Shabbat. This is perhaps the most famous set of Mishnayot, in all of Judaism, for the very simple reason that it's by Mebad Dikin, we recite it every Friday night. Okay, so I just want to start by saying, this is Mishnah Yomit. If you really wanted to, you could study these Mishnayot, and I searched on the internet, there's a ton of essays about what each species is, and what each species is not, and all the different opinions. I'm going to keep it as brief as I can, but I also try to bring in some points that I think are really relevant and really interesting. So the first thing to note, the Mishnah says, what can you light with and what don't you light with? So as I'd like to point out often, the Mishnayot take for granted things that we know. For example, one thing the Mishnah knows is that you have to light Shabbat candles. And it doesn't tell you have to light Shabbat candles, but it's worth noting the Rabbi Lamed writes that there's a mitzvah lemidivrei chachamim. The Chazal writes, this is in Pninei Halacha, this is Pninei Halacha website. There's a mitzvah from the Rabbanan to light Neirot the Chavod Shabbat, in honor of Shabbat. Why? One is Chavod Shabbat. It's an honor because if you're sitting in the dark, it's not chashuvah because you won't have a meal without light. Two, he says, is Oneg Shabbat, the pleasure of Shabbat, because it's more pleasurable to sit when there's light than when there's dark. And the third reason it says is Lasot Shalom Babayit, for Shalom Bayit, to have peace in the household. And it's such an important mitzvah. The Chazal said that if you don't have enough money for all of the needs of Shabbat, lights, Neirot Shabbat, are an essential part of them. In addition, there's a lot of Ma'amarei Chazal about Hamahader ba'hadlakat Neirot Shabbat. If you're a hidur, if you have Mahader, if you are meticulous about lighting Neirot, Zochesh yu banav talmidei chachamim, his children will be talmidei chachamim because they are osik be'orat shel Shabbat, etc., etc. So there's a lot of beautiful midrashim about. An example he brings down Shabbat neirotea hen kvoda, that the lights of Shabbat are their honor. Im shamartem neirot shel Shabbat, if you guard the lights of Shabbat, ani mareh lachem neirot shel Tzion, I will show you the lights of Tzion. Very beautiful midrashim from Lamed about the need and the importance and the beauty of lighting Neirot, lighting candles on Shabbat. So let's read the Mishnah, and we'll try to briefly explain each piece. What can you light with, and what don't you light with? Says the Mishnah. Ein madlikin lo belechesh, lo bechosen, lo bechalach, lo beptilat haidan, lo beptilat hamidbar, so let's read. What can you light with and what can't you light with? Not lechesh. So we'll do the bartanura. It's a tzemer, it's like a wool. Yesh be'erez bein ha'klipa le'etz v'karui lechesh. And there is in the erez, in the cedar tree, between the bark to the tree, and it's called lechesh. So there's a fibrous thing. Okay? He says chosen is pishtan she'eno menufatz. That's what the bartanura says. It's unbeaten flax. And flax was you could use for a wick, but if it's unbeaten, you couldn't. Just want to point out, I found a website that's called, let me make this smaller so you can see it. I've never seen this before, but it's a pretty cool website. I have to make it smaller. Called Trees in the Daf. Now, you can find anything on the internet. That's one of the reasons I love doing this Mishnah Yom on the internet, because there's so much material, so much information out there. So he says, the Gemara explains that lechesh is, let's make this bigger now that I can see it. Shucha de arza, the back of cedar. That's where the bartanura gets it from. Okay, it refers to the wicks of armanata de itbe, the woolly part of the bark. Okay, the material tilata idan refers to the same substance that grows on the willow tree. So as opposed to the bartanura, I don't need that. As opposed to the bartanura, he says bartanura is a tzemer yesh ben klipa le'etz. He also says lechesh is in the erez and tilata midbar also in a different kind of tree, ba'arava. So here we see, and he explains that tree bark is complex, a series of layers, and here you have even a picture, okay, of the fibrous nature inside the bark that you could pull out and make from it a wick. So the Mishnah says you're not allowed to use that for a wick. Lechesh, nor can you use chosen, is unbeaten flax, nor can you use chalach. Chalach is, the bartanura says, chalach is psolet shel meshi. It's, I guess, the remnant of silk. Okay? Lo b'chalach, lo ptilata idan. Ptilata idan is, that's what we said, it's the woolen, it's the fiber in the arava tree. V'lo b'ptilata midbar. Ptilata midbar, just to stop for a second because it's fascinating. Okay? Ptilata midbar Okay, I found this really cool article that says Pilat Hamidbar is, okay, is Ptila Hamidbar Gdola. It's called Tapuach Sdom. So when you look and see what the Tapuach Sdom is, you can see, okay, that Tapuach Sdom is this plant that grows in the desert. I've actually seen it. It's really, really cool. Oh, let me go back to that. Okay, Tapuach Sdom, Pilat Hamidbar. We got a. Here, Pilat Hamidbar. It looks like this. But why is it called Tapuach Sdom? Because when you open it up, you see inside, it looks like an apple, but on the inside is nothing, it's air. And that's why they call it a Tapuach Sdom, because the Anshe Sdom never give you anything. So here it looks like a real apple, and then you open it up, and all you have is air and these wicks and this material that you could make a wick out of. So you can't use that. I don't know how that came up. You can't use that for your wick either. V'lo biyirokash al pnei hamayim, nor can you use this yaruka, this something that grew on the he says, the Bartudera says, stuff the moss that grew on the boat. Why can't you use any of these things? The reason you can't use any of these things is because they were afraid that the wick wouldn't grow properly, it wouldn't light properly, because it doesn't hold a flame. All of these things, the wicks don't hold the flame properly, and we were afraid you would tilt it because the flame was going to go out or whatever, and then you would violate Havara. I'm going to continue. V'lo b'zefet, v'lo b'sha'ava. Zefet is pitch. Sha'ava is a kind of wax. Okay, you can't use. Now we're talking about different oils that you can't use. Sha'ava is wax that's crushed wax. Okay, in a certain kind of wax that they used that didn't light, obviously. Sha'ava shelo yiten zefet names v'sha'ava nitechet. You shouldn't use melted pitch and crushed sha'ava in the nair instead of shemen. Okay, so you can't use those. V'lo b'shemen kik. V'lo b'shemen, lo b'shemen kik. Shemen kik is shemen made from the kikayon. I think I have that. I have a picture of that here somewhere. Okay, kikayon. Here's a picture I found from Rabbi Felix's book. Castor oil plant. So you can't use a shemen from a castor oil plant. Okay, v'lo b'shemen, no Mishnah, lo b'shemen streifa. That's a totally different halacha concept. Shemen streifa is shemen of truma or shemen of kachim that became tameh. So you're not allowed to use shemen of truma shenitma, shami shemen that has to be burned. And we said you're not allowed to do this because it's talking about, the Bartunura says it's talking about shemen sreifa, it's talking about Yom Tov shechal yot erev Shabbat. Okay, it's talking about on Yom Tov because you're not allowed to burn ein sarfim kachim b'Yom Tov. Other Mefarshim say it's not just on Yom Tov, it's talking about Shabbat. Because you're not allowed to burn it on Shabbat, even Erev Shabbat, because maybe you'll do it on Yom Tov, Shechal Liot be'Erev Shabbat. So, lo b'shem and seifa, v'lo be'aliyah, nor are you allowed to use aliyah, which is a kind of kosher fat. V'lo b'chelev. Chelev is non-kosher fat. You're not allowed to eat. The fat that you can eat and not fat you're not allowed to eat. Okay. Chachumamadi says, madlikim b'chelev mevushal. You are allowed to light with cooked fat because it burns properly. The Chachamim say, Echad mevushal, ve'echad she'eno mevushal, ein madlikim ba. Whether it's cooked or whether it's not cooked, you're not allowed to use chelev in order to light for candles. Now you'll just notice it says v'lo b'chelev, so the Chachamim, the Gemara says, Chachamim are the Tanakama. So the Gemara answers that the difference is, you could have, some say you can light with chelev with a little bit of oil because they would mix it in order for it to burn better, and some say you can't light with chelev with a little bit of oil. Either way, in either case, we're not sure how we pass this, so we don't light with chelev at all. Now, what's very interesting, I just want to point out as a conclusion, I'm trying not to go too long. All of these species, you can look them up if you want to, okay? The whole point is, on the one hand, the Gemara says, the Mishnah is trying to tell us what you can't light with, because the whole point is kavod Shabbat. And we want it to be lit well, and we don't want you to touch the lamps. Remember, we also learned you're not allowed to read Le'or HaNer. We learned that in the last parak. So this is the same idea. On the other hand, since it was so important, people didn't have olive oil. Olive oil was unbelievably expensive. I made a link to it. I heard once Planet Money, an NPR program, about how much people have to invest in order to produce oil for light. And it's really asking a lot. So we see that people would use whatever they could, any oil that they could, and so therefore Chazal had to prevent them from using things that they felt were inappropriate uses and would bring to Chilul Shabbat. Okay, we'll stop here. It's long enough. Well, if you have any comments or questions, I'm sure there's a ton you could add, and I'm happy if you would, rspalter@gmail.com. We'll dedicate the learning to the memory of my father, Rav Simcha ben Yitzchak Kalman. Have a great day.